All right, friends, let's get into it. So, yoga for all bodies and proportions, it's for everybody. It is meant to be something that everybody can experience at their own particular level, regardless of your mobility, your mass, your strength type, your lived experiences, your shape, how poses feel and look. All of this stuff matters because it has a tendency to play out on the mat when people show up to the class. So it's why like it makes a difference in how we experience the class. Because I know we have all had that experience where we walked into a class or we're in a class and it's supposed to be beginner and the teacher does something and you're just like, that's not for me. I don't know how your hips are set up, but that's not happening over here. Oh. So in that feeling can be really, especially if it's your first class or if it's the only class that you can get to in a week. You're like, I'm not going back to that because I can't do, fill in whatever it is that they happen to be working on. So our role is to cue the humans that are in front of us and not be so married to the plan of what we have as teachers, right? We want to make sure that the words that we use also create and foster this inclusive environment because many times they don't. We've all, I'm sure, have experienced a class where they're like, put your right hand here, put your left hand there, and then just do this. And you're over here like, do what? How did you get to this part of the mat? Or you'll see, I see this a lot, especially people who are really busy. I'm outwardly projected, like taking care of everybody out there. As soon as people get in class and get on their mat in this quiet moment, they all of a sudden don't remember their right from their left. All of a sudden they don't know which way to go and up and down. It's like y'all are grown. Why are we struggling to follow directions? It's because we're not tuned in to what's going on in here. Then on top of that, we're like, oh, by the way, you should be in this complex shape all at the same time and breathe. Don't pass out while I'm asking you to twist yourself in these shapes while you're still trying to get your brain to connect back to knowing what your right hand and your left hand are doing simultaneously. It's a big ask. So the method that I like to leverage when it comes to cueing for different body types is called the create method. So create, the framework is cue. So use language that is clear and intentional language. That's your cue. Remember, all bodies have unique anatomical realities, as in an anatomical reality for somebody who's in a class with predominantly Black women. Most of us have a lordotic curve, and have a behind us. So when we go lay flat on the floor, that is not very comfortable because your lower back hurts. So what words and what can we offer to intentionally allow, in this case, Shavasana, to be something that's actually restful, or even if it's not restful, if you want to give space for if I'm being mentally nagged by what is going on in my lower back, I struggle to focus. I'm going to then struggle to focus on anything that the teacher is asking me to do. I'm going to then struggle to focus on any bit of meditation. I can't quiet my mind long enough to even remotely experience what's going on because my damn back hurts. So it's important that we offer, okay, these are the bodies that are in front of me. How can I help these bodies fully experience the point of what we're trying to do? How can we make that possible? That's it. That's what we're going for. So engaging, offer functional actions, not aesthetic directives. So we don't necessarily care what it looks like in the body per se from an aesthetic. Does this look pretty? Are my lines? I mean, that's not what we're going for. We're looking for, is this functionally possible for the body that I'm looking at for them to access posture, right? From there, you want to activate. So introduce one action at a time. This is my biggest thing when it comes to cues. I don't know if you've had the experience where you've been in a class and teachers give you too many directions all at once. My running rule of thumb with directions in classes is no more than 3 things at a time. Once you get past 3 things at a time, people get really confused, very confused, because it becomes word salad because there's a delay from the words that are coming out of my mouth to them getting to the person's ears to their auditory system, picking up and processing it, and then allowing them to communicate to their body what they are being asked to do. That all has a time frame that happens within. So if we're offering too many words all at once, the brain can't even pick up and process it. Then let's add another layer of diversity that can happen in class that matters. If people have auditory processing delay, meaning they hear you, they heard you say a thing, but their auditory processing, the mechanism within that allows them to understand language, is on a delay, let's say 5 to 10 second delay, you'll get the huh, and then they'll answer your question. That's your auditory processing delay. So imagine you're in a room with 50 people. You're asking them to breathe and move together in positions that they do not know. Your words are coming from across the room, all right? And then it's going to take them at least 3 to 5 seconds to hear that something has happened. Another 3 to 5 seconds to process that something has happened and to do the thing that you're asking. So if you've added too many directions on top of what you're asking of people, it is bound to create confusion. You get a lot when someone is in down dog. What'll happen is all of a sudden heads pop up. So you know that class is confused because it's the, huh? Yeah. So making sure that you're not adding too many layers too fast in order for people to engage. And then demonstrate variations as that are equally valid. My favorite thing to do, and Cynthia, I know you've heard me say this a million times, but it's still worth repeating. My favorite thing to do is to do the modification. I always, as the teacher, do the modification. And the reason I do the modification is because I know that within a week, I may do this 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So if I have to do this 3, 4, 5, 6 times at 43, that 43-year-old body is going to be asking me a whole lot of questions come week. So sometimes I do it out of self-preservation. And then I also like to model the modification for my type A folks that are in the room that think they have to go hard and fast for everything. And as a recovering type A myself, this forces me to slow down and making sure I stay fully present as a teacher within that space. So all of these things make a difference in the grand scheme of this cueing kind of framework that we're making. Then elevate, affirm that every variation is the full expression of the posture. So I don't care if you're in chair and it's just your knees being bent. For someone who has habitual knee issues, bending those knees may be a massive win for them. I don't care if your arms are super straight and you're really, really low. That's icing on the cake. We'll get there, right? But if those knees are bent and you've had knee trouble for weeks, months, even years on end, that counts as a win. So those things we want to affirm. If we notice a student is struggling with the version that we've given them, one of the best things that you could do as a teacher, and this is where your repetition in teaching and your repetition in training your verbiage comes in, is offer alternatives on the fly. Because what you may have thought of as a modification beforehand may not necessarily work in real time. One of the ones that I always like to kind of lean on, and it seems to work pretty well, is I give the option to go to the floor no matter what it is we're doing, even if we're in standing posture. If somebody if we're in a balance challenge posture, and if I can emulate that same sensation by engaging the same muscle groups, if that person is seated, I can give that as a modification. Right? If I'm trying to open the hamstrings, let's say, if I'm trying to create stretch and lengthen the hamstrings, I can do that standing and I can do that seated. So feel free when you're building a class, don't be afraid in real time when you're in class to think outside of the box to create an additional modification for a student that may be struggling. And when you offer the modification, say it aloud to everybody. So then everyone that is in the room has that option because you don't know who may need it. And make sure you demo that modification that you're doing, especially if it's something that is really out of the box, if you will. So I'll go. Number 2 is remember. Number 3 is engage. Activate. 5 is teach. And 6 is elevate. So this gives your students an opportunity to fully see themselves in that class. And newsflash, folks, for the cheap seats, That's what they're there for. They're not there to see you do all the cool things. I mean, it's cool. It's very cool to demo and to be able to do cool stuff is a part of it. Yeah, you want to um, share what you can, of course. However, it's not the primary function of the class because you're there to serve those people that are in front of you. And that's the thing that keeps them coming back. That's also the thing that keeps you employed as a teacher. Because without those students, then you don't have anyone to teach this thing to. So it's quite a symbiotic relationship. So we want to make sure that we're nurturing and fostering that relationship along the way. All right, so let's get into some strength models that I like to talk about. So there are two types of strength that we like to go over in this impact activity that we're doing. So there's your absolute strength. It is the force muscles can produce regardless of your body weight. So it is your overall body's ability to up that heavy thing. If you have to carry, let's say, a big box, if you're lifting weights, like can you deadlift your own body weight? Can you deadlift the equivalent of someone else's body weight? Supporting a body in a plank or pressing up into a handstand, those are examples that we have strength to be able to access that particular movement. So can you maintain holding a heavier load is what's referring to your absolute strength. So these are things to consider when you're looking at bodies in class. Notice that none of that when we talk about absolute strength has anything to do with your flexibility at all. This is how you end up with people who may be in larger bodies that still do handstands and still do splits and still do all of these amazing things because your flexibility is not directly tied to this absolute strength kind of equation that we're talking through. Does that make sense to everyone? So then the second type of strength is your relative strength. And the way that I like to explain this is, does your brain and your body, is your brain and your body having a conversation regarding your coordination when it comes to the movement I'm asking you to do? Have you grooved in those neural pathways to be able to get the muscles to move in conjunction, muscles, bones, tissue, and all that to move in conjunction with one another if I'm asking you to do a handstand? If you have not practiced that thing, your body's not going to know how to do the thing. So it's not that strength is necessarily your issue. You're strong enough to do the thing. You just have to be physically coordinated in order to connect the dots to make that thing happen. That is my favorite thing of all of this, because what that means is it's all possible. It's all very possible because now with this relative strength piece, it says that, oh, I can learn how to do this. You mean I can get on my mat and I can practice this thing. And now this posture has an opportunity to be available to me, barring any major injury that is within the body, right? So if I'm working with a healthy body, right? Let's say even a healthy body that's recovered from injury and we're just doing a new movement pattern, this body still has the opportunity to learn its fullest version of this posture. That alone is totally where students get an opportunity to fully win and see themselves grow in their personal practice. So there's a lot, even though there's a lot that can be discouraging about yoga when you see people doing these high flying, crazy things, know that there's a place for you to fit in that too. And know that 99.999% of the time, a lot of that has to do with what has that person practiced to that point, like in their yoga practice specifically. What other things have they done off the yoga mat that contribute to them being able to do that skill already? Did they take gymnastics for 10 years before they got there? So their body, their organism, it knows what handstand looks like. It knows what back bend looks like. It knows what access and flexibility looks like. Because they're not managing a certain level of fear that you may have if you've never done this before. So this is why I say when it comes to like relative strength, it's one of my favorite things to talk about, because now it gives students a chance to say, oh, this could be possible for me. I just need to practice. It's the thing that everybody likes to avoid, but practice is the thing that will get you, let me correct that statement. Right practice in the right direction will give you the opportunity to get to a posture that you may not have had available quiet down your diverting your turnings of your mind that get really, really noisy when you get on the mat, when you're trying something new. Eventually that gets quiet and go, oh, it, it just happened. That's where the space for your yoga magic comes from. So your crow and your arm balances and being able to jump back and being able to do handstands, it's that practice skill of getting on the mat and doing that thing. And you'll get to a place, it gives you an opportunity to get to a place where you now can talk through a demo and it's old hat because your body is physically comfortable and has the muscle memory to complete this movement. All right. And that is also important when it comes to your teaching because then it allows you to cue safely and offer your students real-time variations because you physically know what it feels like to be in this particular posture. You also know what it feels like to physically grow into doing that posture because you have a recollection or a memory of where you started as a teacher, as as a student as well. All right, so common body variations to consider, proportions of limbs, long or short limbs, torso, how a longer or shorter torso is going to move differently. A sit going to feel different in a plank. So for instance, if I am recruiting someone with a shorter torso to do any abdominal work, I want to really make those of us who have had children, I want to really make sure I offer them a cue to engage their lower abdominals and remind them that they can put their feet on the floor. Remind them that your lower back should not be doing all this work. So maybe you need to recline more or come to seated. Just it's those simple cues that now make this abdominal work more accessible. A lot of times when you have a lordotic curve and a shorter torso, all of that energy gets dumped into your lower back, especially if your abdominals are challenged, or if you have the abdominal wall has separated from pregnancy and it just didn't go back together, you have trouble stabilizing your abdominals. So you have to actively work on those things. So giving that cue, that body's reminder to your student to say, hey, make sure your lower abdominals are engaged. Another one that is really another posture that you want to give additional cues and attention to is down dog. I know that for the life of me, people claim it is an active resting posture. It is absolute trash without the right cues, and it can be very, very miserable for the lower back. So here are the things you want to offer for students as well when it comes to these body proportions and limbs that we're talking about here. You want to make sure that this is not all being dumped into people's shoulders. So in order to do that, we want to use our big back muscles and we want to use our legs and engage the lower abdominals to support the body when you are in down dog. If you do not engage those larger muscle groups, it will never feel like active rest. It will just always feel like fresh hell. And as much as it happens in a yoga class, as often as we call on it and use it throughout our vinyasa flows and many practices, neglecting to give those cues can make for a really miserable experience. So things you want to say, specific words I will give you, is lift your kneecap. So squeeze your quads is another one that I love. It's going to engage your legs when you're in down dog. Tuck your belly button toward your chin, because remember, we're in an inversion. So drawing that belly button not only back, but up forces most bodies to engage their lower abdominals. That alone will begin to take the pressure out of the hands and move it more to the legs. And you'll notice with those two cues that heels will start to drift a little bit closer to the floor because now we've engaged those larger muscles on the posterior chain as well. So the hamstrings will get longer when those quads are lifted. It allows them to open and bring the feet closer to the floor. Shoulders. The big one with shoulders is if my elbows are out wide this way, all of that energy is kind of dumped into my shoulders. If I turn my elbows in, like there would be towards my knees in this position here, now it's in my back. My back has bigger muscles, and that's what we want to engage. So if you ever have a saying, my neck hurts when I'm in down dog, check their elbow position. That's one of the first things you want to do. Check hands because that's a grounding point for them. And then check what their where their not here. Check where their elbows are um, in relation to the floor. That alone can relieve a world of trauma and struggle when it comes to being in a yoga class, because again, we lean on down dog quite a bit when we're building classes. All right, so shape and mass, the larger bodies, more muscular builds. Larger muscles can be somewhat of an imposition when it comes to flexibility. Like, do you physically have tissue that is in the way of you moving into a different posture? I always like to offer students the opportunity to move your fluff. If you need to move something out of the way to get to another position on the mat, it's your body, put your hands on it, move it to where you want. Sometimes people feel self-conscious about, oh, I had to move my belly, I had to squish it. I like to do it myself personally, for my own body. And I feel like when I do it for myself, it gives folks in the class permission to do it for themselves as well. So that's another one of those modifications that I will model in real time, just to say, hey, like, you know, we all got a little fluff. We've earned it. We put in our years and our time. So let's do what we want to with it to make things as accessible as possible. So mobility is another one. Now with mobility, it can be an interesting one, because hypermobility a lot of times is celebrated. It's like, oh, this person is super, super flexy. However, hypermobility is not always the safest thing. For me, I have hypermobile joints, my ankles in particular. So what that means is they get weak and wobbly in balance poses. So yeah, it gives me access to other flexibility to be able to do splits and things, but I need to make sure that I'm making a conscious effort to strengthen the muscles around those joints, so that I can have not only the flexibility, but I can be stable. So if we see students that are hypermobile, we want to make sure that they're accessing their strength in that pose and not just making the shape, right? We want to intentionally be in something versus like, can I do the thing? I like to use this one as forward fold. It's one thing, or seated forward fold in particular. It is one thing for me to sit down, fold forward, and touch my toes. I happen to have a short torso and long arms. I can touch my toes without very little effort, okay? So being able to touch my toes is very different than intentionally lifting my chest and guiding my sternum towards my toes, then engaging my lower abs and drawing them up and in towards my chin. Those are very different set of cues than just fold forward, touch your toes. So even for folks that you see that are in super flexible and hypermobile bodies, those bodies need additional cues as well too. So don't be afraid to give them just because the person can do that particular pose. Because again, the shape's not the prize here. That's right. That's not what we're going for. What we're going for is, what is the intention in the posture? What are we trying to get it to? What are we trying to give the person the opportunity to access within their body with the posture that we're asking them to do? Okay. And then life factors. Is it pregnancy? Have they had a chronic injury? Pain, trauma? All of that stuff exists inside the body. So if someone has had, let's say, knee surgery, I've had two, so that's why it's my running example. It took a long, long, long time for me to mentally be able to go, I can do these things. Physically, it was repaired. Physically, it was actually better than it was before, because structurally, it was made more sound than what I had kind of come into this world with. But what my body remembered and what I remembered is how much it hurt to be injured. And it created this stopping point of what I was willing to allow myself to try and do. That particular piece, the mental part of it, took a very long time to kind of wrap my brain around. So much like us, our students come into classes with those same kind of roadblocks. So the way that we can build up when it comes to injuries, have conversations with students. Sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't, but be willing to ask. If you see someone actively avoiding a posture or actively avoiding the way that you were asking them to do it, there's probably a reason for that, right? So you want to make sure you're being observant, and then also offer blocks all the time, especially for knees. How can you support the hips and how can you support the knees is another one that I like to give, especially if we are doing things on the floor like camel, anything like that, anything where the knees are really bent in intense and interesting ways. Offer how can we elevate that person's hips, because usually I would say 99.9% of the time, it's going to take the additional pressure off of the knee joint, and that's usually what they need. Another thing with knees, and this is one that's really important, most, I won't say it, let me rephrase. Many of folks that have knee trauma and drama have really tight quad muscles and really tight hip flexors. So if you can offer an opportunity for the quad stretched first, at least first, before you get down to the floor and do any other knee-esque thing, this will give them a better opportunity to access the posture that you're asking them to do. If you can do dancer, if you can do camel, if you could do triangle mukhapada hasasa, if you could, there are a whole host of floor quad postures that you can offer a student that will allow them, and in standing ones, yes, but the ones on the floor I feel are more effective with knees, because now it's not that fear of, not only do I have to fight gravity and be on my feet at the same time, but I also have to make sure, my knees aren't doing weird things. So I like to leverage the floor for these and really open up the quads. If you can get that open really, really good in your warm up, it makes a world of difference with lingering knee issues. And let's keep it a buck. Most of us have some semblance of lingering knee issues at anyone over let's say 35. Those knees that were taken over for cash money in the 99s and the 2000s, we probably could use a little help. Let's just be friends here. Like, okay, I'm just saying. So in order to give people space, like just do these. And I will say too with quads and let me back up for a second. Quads, tibialis exercises, so your shin bone, your leg bone in the front of your leg, tibialis raises, hamstrings, those are like everyday things for knee repair. If you have folks that are asking you about recommendations of stronger knees, and calves, that's the other one. I know I was missing something. But if you can do those on a regular basis, like do little small increments, maybe a 5-minute circuit of those, just let your students know that they compound over those days. And when they get into a yoga class, it gives so much space and freedom to move around. And eventually it may tamp down some of that knee pain and discomfort that they could be feeling when it comes to coming into class. So again, back to that practice thing. So lifestyle factors, to just put a bow on the common body variations. Lifestyle factors, mobility, shape and mass, and body proportions all play a role in the bodies that show up to our classes. This is why our cues make a difference. If somebody has a shoulder injury and you have a ton of down dog in your class, what are you going to do? What is your option for them? Sit them down on the floor and they reach for their toes. Now, it's not going to reach for your toes. Let me reach towards your toes, because we don't care if you touch them or not. What we do care is we're giving you an alternative to the posture that we're offering, so they can feel included in the class. Because you have shoulder stuff, there's no amount of one arm upside down dog is just not your friend at that point. So the easier thing to do is to be seated and do a floor version of it. So this works. Can you sit in front of a wall and maybe sit cross-legged and put your palms on the wall? Can we down dog that way? Now the wall is offering a bit of support as well, and you're not having to hold up your entire body weight in this position. All right, so we'll talk pose review now. We did talk about down dog already, so we'll move on. Warrior 2, let's talk about that for a minute. Theoretically, it's one of those that feels really real, that is allegedly easy, and we kind of access it all the time. However, if you have hip mobility issues, squaring your hips toward the front of your mat when you are in warrior one rather, when you're in warrior one can be uncomfortable in that back leg. So making sure that you change the position of where your arms are overhead allows for less torque on that hip. So if my arms are up here, I'm leaning back, I'm pushing the pressure in my lower back, and then I have that back foot anchored into the mat at that and there's a huge lunge in my front leg. So this torque of the torso towards the front of the mat, it can feel kind of crunchy some days. So one of the things that you can offer your students is tell them to bring their arms down. It doesn't have to always be way up here. Bringing your arms down, even bringing them to prayer, and then really grounding into the pinky side of that back foot, very important. And then making sure the knee tracks in the same direction as the toes are, as the big toe is going. So that front knee is going straight ahead. That back leg is anchored into the ground. And the last one that is very important, those lower abdominals have to be engaged. Because once again, if my lower abdominals aren't engaged, now my pelvis is tilted forward and all of that pressure is on my lower back. Remember our friends with our lordotic curve? If we don't purposefully engage our lower abdominals, what will happen is our lower back is going to carry all of that tension. Our lower and mid back usually carries all of this tension, and it just feels stuck, basically. So I like to tell people, bring your arms down. Now I can draw my lower abs in, and I can lift my ribs away from my hips. Now the center portion of my body, my center mass is more supported, and I can really ground my feet into the floor. So this becomes a strength building posture, as opposed to let me just make the shape of warrior one or warrior two. It's the same kind of for both of those. It's just now we've turned the other direction and we're out wide on the mat, but you still want to make sure your lower abdominals engaged, because if not, you're going to dump all of that into your lower back and your mid back, and none of that's comfortable. The other thing with that hip rotation in either of the warriors is if our lower abdominals aren't engaged and we're not lifted, the chest doesn't stay lifted, sometimes it kind of torques the back of the knee as well. So again, that lift, it pulls that tension out of that knee joint as well. Just little details that can be helpful to make your students' experience of the class just that much better. All right, so we talked down dog, we talked warrior 1 and 2, seated forward fold, we've already talked about. And then the last thing we'll talk about is language. So this is a big one for me. Swap words that could be inflammatory. Touch your toes is inflammatory for someone who has never touched their toes. So I like move. Let's see what's possible. I like feel free to, as opposed to just trying.
I'm sorry.
Effort. Yes.
You went out. So I heard move, but then it went out.
So I like move towards your toes.
Okay.
Instead of touch your toes, because if I'm a person who has never touched my toes before, it can feel quite defeating. Okay. Then I like, instead of try to, I like feel free to. Try to connotates effort, and that idea of excessive effort. If I forget the thing, now that mind noise can get really loud about, okay, I'm failing at the yoga thing again. But I do like feel free, because it gives those options. Aesthetic based, like we all kind of know, we've done this long enough where we're not saying make it pretty. We're not working to get a beach body. If you want, now let me back that one up. I will say that about myself, because I want y'all to know from the bottom of my soul that if I get abs, I'm going to act a complete fool. Okay. I will have no sense. Nobody will be able to tell me a damn thing. I would just be out here for the streets. I'm sorry in advance. Okay. But look, that's for me. That's for me. That's not everybody's ministry. Okay. For real. Okay. But for students, they don't need it. They're not worried about their body. So things that are specific to somebody's body, stay away from those things. You don't want to tell someone that being heavy is a contraindication for doing handstands, because it's not. That is something that I've actually been told in the class before. You don't tell people that, right? It was absolutely ridiculous. I will say I'm glad that it was me and not another student, because I think had it been someone else, they may not have come back. But because I know better, then right, I know what to listen to and not to listen to. And then making sure that we are using sustainably functional cues for people that actually allows and creates a space for them to breathe and just be. So that is what I have for you all. If you're interested in a full 50 hours of teacher training that is taught from this perspective, we have our 5-day intensive coming up, so September 18th to the 22nd. So it is 50 hours of me lecturing, and you walk away with your training certificate from that 5-day intensive. All of it's online. All of it is recorded. So if you cannot attend all of it, don't worry. You can always catch the replay as well. And it's just $250 to join us for the 5-day intensive. But yeah, it's a deep 50 hours of us actually getting on the mat and working together. There is time for you to practice in groups, and there is also an opportunity for you to get real-time feedback with me while you're teaching in your groups as well. And then there are 2 homework assignments that are required. You have to send me 2 hours of recorded video of you teaching, and then a 500 word essay on the yamas and niyamas, which we go over as a part of those 50 hours. Those are the requirements if you'd like to join us for the intensive program. So that's what I have for you all. Do you have any questions for me? I'm happy to answer anything that I can.